In today's video, we're going to talk about proper stance. Now, I would be remiss as a coach if I didn't tell you about the importance of making sure that you think about your stance at all times throughout the day. Not only is it important throughout the day because of the duration of our position, but it's also important throughout the day because we're practicing the pattern that we're going to take when we add load or fatigue in your workouts or in your daily activity. So if you're standing properly throughout most of your day, you'll be more likely and more prepared to stand properly in those moments of maximum challenge. Now let's talk about what it means, and we'll go through a checklist for your proper stance in the future. It begins down on the floor. We'll talk all the way up the body with that foundation, laying the framework for everything that comes above it. Let's get right into it now. So I'm standing here enclosed to make it pretty easy for you to see what's going on with my body position. Things to notice are the position of the shoulders, the waistband, and then this nice line right down the side of the leg. When we're standing and we begin that checklist with the feet, we want to have our feet about the width of our hips. So my ankles are right underneath my knees, which are right underneath my hip bones. You can find those bones on the front of your hip, right at the top of your pelvis here. Now, as we go from the feet and work our way upward, we have that width which promotes the alignment of the knee and the hip and then the low back and the shoulders. So we're already beginning down at the bottom. For bonus points, you can think about keeping an active foot with a little bit of that arch underneath and a little pressure from your toes against the floor. I like to think about it like here, from my heel to the front of my foot, just closing that distance a little bit, trying to squeeze a bit with the bottom of the foot in order to create this little space of the arch. Now, for some people that's more challenging if you have been deficient in that activity, or if you haven't done it before, or if you have any kind of injury history. But strengthening the bottom of your feet and having that active base of support will only benefit you as we work our way up. So it's a good place to start your mental effort. If that's overwhelming for you, just focus on the feet and don't worry about the rest of this video until you're ready to add the progression. After we have that position with the stance and the activity in the feet, the next thing to think about is the ankle and then the knee. If you look really close here to the foot, we want to make sure that we're not allowing our ankle to roll to the inside. It's a subtle shift in the knee as well, but the difference between having this proper alignment and that space underneath the foot and then the ankle when it crashes to the inside. This is a small movement, it's subtle, but it makes a big difference in the knee position. So we're working our way up from below once again. If we have weak ankles or improper position and the ankles are caving into the inside, the knees will be predisposed to go as well. We've all heard a coach talk to us about the importance of squatting with our knees going outward rather than coming inward. Same thing when we're jumping and landing. We don't want to hit the floor and have our knees go narrow because it overloads the ligaments on the inside portion of the knee. If we're thinking about our stance and we have the active feet with the right width, the alignment all the way up to the hips, and making sure that we're keeping those ankles as part of that alignment, we'll be predisposed to proper knee position and therefore more comfort and more function in your everyday activities and your workout. Now I'm going to turn sideways to show you this next part. When we're standing, again with that width and the activity in the feet, we want to maintain a little bit of bend in the knee. So just right here, I want to make sure that I'm not standing with my knees locked out. This is pretty common for people to stand with their knees all the way extended. We want to have a little bit of bend, just that activity in the muscles around the knee and that position of the upper and lower portion of the leg coming together. If we're standing with locked knees, we're really using the end range of motion of the joint to find the stability that we need in order to hold ourselves up. We want that stability to come from muscle activity. So it's more expensive, both for the mind and for the body, to stand in this active way. But what we're doing is we're putting the load onto our muscles rather than our tendons and ligaments. The great thing about that is when you're loading up your muscles, they become bigger and stronger, whereas your tendons and ligaments become worn out and brittle and then prone to injury. So if we're standing from the side once again and you have your knees locked, usually this is putting all that load into the knees or into the low back. That's because we've adopted this overextended position, overly arched in the low back. Now I'm exaggerating it to make it easy to see, but once you notice this and you feel it in yourself, you'll see it everywhere on the people throughout the day. Watch for this posture for yourself and in other people. As you're going the rest of the way up from the floor, we have that stance. We have the activity in the feet, the ankle alignment, and the slight bend in the knee. Remember, when we're doing this, we just want our knee to be slightly bent. We're not looking for an athletic stance. This will be too much, but we don't want to have that all the way overextended knee. Keep that slight bend so that when you're standing, you have the load on those muscles. The next thing to think about is working our way up to the hips, the pelvis, and the low back. And these two structures are always connected together. So if we're making a difference in one, we can expect a difference in the other. One of the most common causes of back pain is actually due to the position of the pelvis, and the fact that that poor position sets us up for a poor position in the lower back. When we look at this one, if I turn sideways again to make it easy to see, as I stand in front of you, I want to keep a little bit of tone in my glutes and in my abs. This way, I'm making sure that the pelvis is rotated a little bit to the back side. This is called posterior pelvic tilt. More accurately, we should call it not anterior pelvic tilt, which is not forward tilt. Let me show you what that looks like. Most people, they stand with their knees all the way locked and their hips tilted forward. So they'll be in a position like this. And again, I'm exaggerating it to make it easy to see, but you can see the waistband on my pants is slanted downward. We want to use the activity in the glutes and in the abs to tilt the pelvis in a backwards direction, really as though if I had a bowl of soup right here, I would be tilting it out, pouring it onto my lap. Well, we want to have that posterior pelvic tilt to avoid the anterior pelvic tilt, the forward. When we go into anterior pelvic tilt, it's a simple analogy to think about the elbow. If I go all the way as straight as my elbow can go, and I kind of hang out and I bounce and I rapidly straighten that elbow, eventually the elbow gets pretty cranky. Those tendons and ligaments are not built to hang out at the end of their range of motion. And the same thing applies here in the low back. You have a series of joints all stacked above each other, those vertebrae. And if we go as far as they can go, standing with the knees locked, standing in overextension, this is really achy for the back, especially when we try to introduce movement like walking or physical activity. By contrast, with some activity in your abs and glutes, the posterior pelvic tilt is achieved, and we've created a really fantastic base of support for your spinal column to come up from. Those are the last few points of stance performance that I'm going to touch on. Number one, from the hips coming up, the spine, the low back, the mid back, and the upper back, even the neck, should be included as one unit. So, from the hips up, the first thing to think about is the totality of your spine. Many people start with good posture in the low back, especially if they've set themselves up, as we've talked about in this video. But then, when they get to the mid back and the neck, they start to reach forward, to round forward, or to carry their head in front of them. Again, I'm exaggerating to make these positions easy to see, but ideally, we're able to maintain a vertical line down the back side of the body. As I stand here, the tone in the abs and glutes isn't very visible on camera, but believe me, there's connection and contraction in these muscles all the time. Finally, when we're in this tall position, if we're thinking about the whole spine, it includes the back of the neck. Really, from the hairline all the way to the waistband on your shorts. That is your entire length of your spine, and you don't want to leave your head and neck unattended to. Now, I know 21st century life puts us out in front a lot. We type, text, and drive with our hands in front of us, all here. A lot of activity through the chest and shoulders, and usually it's at the expense of the upper back. If we stay in a proper position, these muscles will actually function better than they will if we've lost that proper posture. So not only will you be more comfortable, but you'll also be able to do more in terms of your activities or your exercises. This PVC pipe makes it really easy to see the alignment that we desire. So if I stand with this next to me, the PVC pipe should be at about the middle of the ankle, the center of the knee. It lines up perfectly with this stripe on my shorts and comes through the hip, and then to the shoulder. And this is the alignment that we want. So our proper position is all going to be based on this vertical position. If we have the collapsed ankles, the overextended knees, the hips, the back, and I'll put this arm out of the way to make it easy to see, you can see how we've deviated from this vertical line. We've started to create these curves in the body. When you're doing your alignment, you can also think about it from the front. So ankle, knee, hip, and shoulder all aligned largely above each other. Keep in mind that that vertical alignment needs to continue right up your back. So if I hold the PVC pipe here, it's touching my butt, my low back, my shoulder, and the back of my head. This is the positional alignment we want to have, rather than any kind of forward or dropping position of the head and neck, or of the shoulders. Now, how can you apply this kind of organized stance to your everyday life? I like to give the analogy of a boombox or a portable stereo. When we crank up the volume on that stereo, it's going to change the loudness of the song, but it doesn't change the lyrics or the beat. That's a great way to think about your position. When we're going into our maximum weightlifting challenges, or we're really pushed to the limit of fatigue in our exercise, it's great to really turn the volume up and to think about all these positions at their maximum. We really want to keep the knees, the ankles, the bracing, and the posture when we're working with a lot of weight or when we're tired. But just like that stereo, when we decrease the volume, we can decrease the activity in these muscles for our everyday stance. So when you're standing in line at the bank, or you're loading the dishwasher, or whatever it may be, keep in mind that we want to have about 20 or 30% contraction in these supporting muscles. It will be metabolically more expensive because now we're loading up those muscles, but it's going to be much better for your joints in the long run. So when you're standing and you're doing something simple, get about 20 or 30% activity in those muscles, and when you step things up to a more challenging scenario, then crank up all those muscles and really put them up to 100% contraction. Like we touched on at the start of this video, the way you're going through your everyday stance will be practice and movement conditioning for how your body will respond when you go into those more challenging scenarios. So spend most of your day with 20 or 30% contraction, proper joint position, and a good awareness here. And then when you get into those more challenging scenarios, you'll be ready, and your body will show up with an excellent bracing strategy. You'll be more comfortable throughout the day, and you'll have better performance. So it's really a win-win. We're hitting the things I care about as a coach to make sure that we take care of you, and the things that I know you care about as an athlete, because we all want to have that workout performance or that physical activity that feels good while we're doing it. All right, hope this was helpful, and as always, send me messages, questions, comments, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or anything else you can think of. Hopefully I can be like a little positive angel on your shoulder, keeping you at the top of your mind with the proper alignment and the muscle activation when you go through your everyday stance. See you next time.